are modern comedies less funny than classic sitcoms? The BBC has launched an initiative to revive the classic sitcom format, which it says is dying out. Bosses say that broadcaster has oversupplied new comedy dramas, which touch on sort of worthy subjects, but they say are lacking in laugh-out-loud jokes. The BBC has announced that the classic sitcom needs to be saved as programmes in the style of Only Fools and Horses are what audience want to see. Do you agree with that, though? Are classic sitcoms simply better than modern comedies? 0207 862 2222, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. Mike, your thoughts on this? I feel like I could guess it, but go on, tell us. Old sitcoms or modern comedy dramas?
OK, people are going to say, oh, that's so predictable. But old comedies are much, much funnier than new comedies. You know, Fawlty Towers, brilliant. The Good Life, I love that one. Right. You know, Suburban, what was it, Surbiton, you know, and the Goods and their snobby neighbours, and Hello, Hello, because it was such a wonderful blend of, you know, Second World War comedy and the superfluousness of it all, and it had Vicky Michelle in it, you know, wonderful actress, and that attracted me. But compare that to Monty. Like, now, did you say you like the Fleabag or whatever it's called?
I like Fleabag, yeah.
I think Fleabag is a bit lavatorial, a bit highbrow, a bit sort of in-jokish, and I can't watch...
Highbrow?
Yeah, and I can't watch more than 5 minutes of it.
You're just nostalgic, aren't you? Now, I'd chuck in the Likely Lads. I like all those things.
I love the Likely Lads.
But what about Two Doors Down, Gavin and Stacey, Blackadder, The Young Ones, Motherland, you probably hear that, Miranda, The Peep Show.
Yeah, there's lots.
Derry Girls. But Fleabag, give it a go.
No, I've tried to give it a go, and I'm sorry, I'm cringing after 5 minutes. Can't watch it, just can't watch it.
OK, let's take a little look at Fleabag then.
The only thing harder than having to tell your super high-powered, perfect, anorexic, rich super sister that you've run out of money is having to ask her to bail you out. I'm just going to ask her. I'm just going to ask her. I'm just going to ask her. I'm just going to come.
Do you need to borrow money?
No. Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it.
I don't think that's very highbrow at all.
I don't find that funny at all. I couldn't detect 1 ounce of humour in that. I was just puzzled as to what the dialogue was all about. I mean, Kev mentioned the Likely Lads, which is absolutely fantastic. You know, the Likely Lads get themselves into trouble, ending up in a magistrate's court for a punch-up in front of the magistrate. It was just so funny stuff. It was just great stuff. And it was very working class and down to earth.
Well, but you watch, they were building up the tension there, and then she says, do you want to borrow money? No. After, of course, that's what you want to do. I did think that was wonderfully done.
I also think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is just an absolutely incredible actress, and it sort of hinged on her personality and writing, obviously. Yeah. Mike, what about Fawlty Towers?
Fawlty Towers, love it. I mean, the sheer genius of it was that they stopped after 12 episodes, didn't they? There were only ever 12 episodes of...
Is that genius?
Of course it's genius, because I still sit down and watch them at least 2 or 3 times a month when they come up, and that's because they're so rare. I do, I love it. And,
for those of you...
John Cleese was at his absolute best, genius comedian, just wonderful stuff.
For those of you who might be watching that are Gen Z or millennials, here is Fawlty Towers.
Is there something wrong?
Will you stop talking about the war?
Me? You started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland. Yeah. Who's this then? Stuff you, but I'll do the funny walk. He
The comedy is slightly more overt, it's slightly less...
The sledgehammer.
Exactly, and a bit more slapstick involved in that, which some people would say might be quite old-fashioned.
But what about the individual characters? Every character in Fawlty Towers was funny. Manuel, I come from Barcelona, you know, and all that kind of stuff. The individual characters are so brilliant.
If you want a bit of sort of wartime humour, I think Dad's Army was better. I like Fawlty Towers.
Dad's Army, brilliant. I totally agree. The more you mention, the more I like them. Yeah.
Let's speak to some of our viewers and find out whether the old sitcoms, because we're sort of talking about the difference between the older sitcom format to what would be a more worthy drama with maybe some dark humour involved. Peter from Wolverhampton, what's your preference?
Well, I think all the modern comedies are better than the old comedies, and I think Mike needs to get in the time machine and go back and live in the 1970s, both politically and in his
I think
taste.
if it existed, he probably would, Peter. Yes, I think he probably would.
Peter, listen, I wouldn't go back and live in the 1970s. The world's moved on. But humour has not kept up with the world. It's all so obtuse now, you know, it's all...
That's just not true.
It's obtuse, it's clever jokes, don't get me, honestly.
No.
But are they clever? Sorry, Peter.
Gavin and Stacey, you were going to say, weren't you, Peter?
Yes, Gavin and Stacey. If you watch Gavin and Stacey, you'll see the most humane, down-to-earth, working-class, wonderful humour.
Yeah, not bad, but, you know, not great.
I think we can see some Gavin and Stacey, actually. Can we have a look? Better. It is incredible. But what I've realised actually in comedy, just watching the clips that we've shown now, for me, I love to see an observation of real life. I love to see things reflected back that I experience. That's absolutely true. You know, James Corden's character has got that absolutely spot on. Yeah. Everybody just wants a bit of what you're having. And you do want to fence it off sometimes. Whereas the older comedies are kind of punchlines. They're like the comedians that stand up there and they just do, you know, joke after joke after joke rather than a story.
It's music hall almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't Mrs. Merton a bit like that? That Gavin and Stacey stuff. What was she in Mrs. Merton?
Mrs. Merton.
Oh, was that it?
No, the royal family, you're thinking.
The royal family, yeah.
But you would just want the punchline. You want every 5 minutes there to be a punchline that you can laugh at.
When we just saw that flea bit, Fleabag.
Fleabag sounds like a personal attack on a very, very accomplished writer and actress.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Storm. You've sussed me out. I don't want to wait 12 seconds for the joke. You know, as it suddenly takes one turn, then another angle. I just want somebody to say something funny, bang, and smash me between the eyes, you know?
But Peter got Gavin and Stacey absolutely right, because it's a humane humour, but as you say, it's every day, and you can relate to it.
Yeah.
And it's just funny, it's gripping. I'm going to go home and watch that this afternoon.
There'll be quite a few, I think, that you'll have to go home and watch. Peter, thank you very much for your call. It's Saxon from Skegness. What's your view on this? Old comedies, new comedies?
Well, I think the older comedies are better. There are some new ones, and as I said to your researcher, they should really, some of the modern comedies and comedians, they should be summoned under the Trade Descriptions Act, because they're just not funny. You know?
Well, do you think it's a generational thing? Do you think what was funny 30 years ago it may not be funny to a younger viewer now? They may watch it and sort of gasp or cringe?
It probably is. But I always think that if you're feeling a bit down and fed up with yourself, get on to a couple of episodes of Only Fools and Horses and the Morecambe and Wise Show, because they're absolute, if you don't laugh at that, then you should get your pulse.
But Saxon,
some of the modern comedies are funny. I mean, you can imagine some of the new stuff is for the younger generation, and I appreciate that. But if you're seeing it now, I mean, that's a classic. With the bar, I mean, that'll always be funny. People should laugh at that. It happens, you know.
But I
suppose, stop laughing.
Saxon, that's slapstick, and I would say that's probably, although still funny and still relevant, because there isn't any sort of cultural things tied up in slapstick. It is what it is. Somebody gets hit in the face with a spade, or somebody falls off a bar because they haven't quite held it right. That's always going to stand the test of time. I suppose what we're talking about is time's moved on, and what we want is a bit more worthiness to our comedy, and maybe you find that takes away from the humour.
And of course, now you've got the new comedies be so politically correct.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But the cycles comedy.
But Saxon, you wouldn't want to go back, because look, we remember the good ones. You wouldn't want to go back to say Love Thy Neighbour, which was horribly bigoted and racist.
No, never. We've evolved from that. We've gone from that. I mean, this diversity. I mean, they would never allow anything like that now. Some bits were funny, some were not. Some were cringy, and I appreciate that. But some of the modern stuff is just above everybody's head. They're playing to their own niche or to their own egos. You know?
I can't understand most of it.
Saxon, thank you very much for your call. Barry from Dover, what's your view when it comes to comedy? Are the classics the best?
Well, I think the modern comedy people are dreadful. The amount of swearing, I cannot understand. I'm not trying to be an innocent at all, but I was in the Air Force for 12 years, but I never swear. I don't swear. I find it unnecessary. But the modern comedians, they take the mickey out of each other, and they're dreadful. And yet you get the likes of Morecambe and Wise, who the programme was on last night, and they failed in America. But we are a country of wonderful, wonderful comedians. And also, Love Thy Neighbour, I agree with the previous gentleman that sometimes it was a little too far, but it showed the stupidity, the absolute stupidity of race and all that sort of, and it was very, very funny. Now,
Barry,
the modern comedians.
I hear you like the classics, the old, the modern comedians swear too much, but comedians have been swearing for years. I mean, Billy Connolly is a classic example of that. He swears,
not on telly,
but not on
really.
telly. Okay,
No.
but it's certainly in his live act swears like a
I
trooper.
agree, but it's what we want to see in our living room.
No, but the Ofcom regulator controls what swearing you can have on TV. And the bar is very, very low.
Hardly any control these days.
Well, there are comedies out there that don't have that much swearing, and one I'm thinking of is This Country, which I personally think is one of the top comedies, modern comedies to be made. Let's take a look at that.
So do you know what you want then?
Oh, I just can't decide at the moment.
Why don't you have a look through one of these books then?
Oh,
choose something from there.
Cheers, man. So what's that one?
That's a pig.
Alright. So who's that?
That's Friends.
And that one?
Harry Styles. Tasmanian. That's Justin Bieber. Fred Flintstone. Spock. Stig of the Dump.
Alright. Who did these?
Me.
Oh, right. They were really good.
I know.
I think the problem when you take clips out of a modern comedy drama is there's no punchline, like you're absolutely saying, Mike, but you need to know the characters, you need to know that setup. That's a neighbour that's quite dangerous.
What was that?
He started doing, so it's This Country, the neighbour has started doing tattoos, has offered Carrie a free one, and she's went round Kerry, and they're just outrageously bad there. So she's trying to get out of it with this fairly dangerous individual standing in front of her. Yeah. But you mentioned in the break there isn't enough comedies from working class backgrounds, but there you've got one right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I'll watch it now. I didn't. But there was a bit of the vibe of The Office, which was another fantastic.
It's an odd stop.
Yeah, just the way they're talking and the pauses and the.
Were you a fan of The Office?
I had to watch it 3 times before I started getting it. You know what I mean? Somebody got me the box set, and what's the name of the star on the right?
Ricky Gervais.
Ricky Gervais. Everybody told me he was a genius, right? And he's got a fortune of about 50 million quid. But I don't think it's 50 million quid's worth of funny. But other people do.
The population disagree.
So they can have it. One of Kev's favourites, The Likely Yards. I mean, you said about modern life representing itself. Yeah. Wasn't that great between a layabout and a boy who had aspirations in life and wanted to become middle class? Best friends growing up. One was the layabout, going around nicking drinks in the pub. The other one wanted to be a surveyor. It was very funny. It was very, very funny.
If you'd have gone on, would you have been saying no that on school fees and get some in national service?
I'm sure he would, yeah.
Right, we're going to have to wrap this up now. Thank you very much for all your calls. I think really on the phones it's the old classics that won out.
I think it is.
We're going to have to move on.